Good evening, dear listener. Tonight, we return once again to the quiet folds of history. If you are comfortably in bed or letting your thoughts soften into stillness, you've come to the right place. Perhaps the day has left its weight upon your shoulders, or maybe, like so many before you, you simply seek the hush between the hours. Wherever you are, whatever you carry, let it all drift now into the quiet. The world begins to dim, and in its place, the cold breath of an ancient winter wraps around you. Not gentle, not idle, but sharp and unrelenting. The year is long past our own, and the village you now enter lies beneath a colorless sky, where frost crusts the rooftops and every step crunches like old bones beneath your feet. A low mist hangs in the air, rising from the nearby fields where last year's harvest has already been reaped and buried in snow. Thatched roofs sag under the weight of fresh snowfall. Wooden shutters are sealed tight, their gaps stuffed with straw and cloth. She pulls her shawl tighter as she ladles a thin porridge into wooden bowls. Every extra gesture feels too costly. Firewood is stacked high but burns slowly. Bread is cut into thinner slices. Candles are trimmed short and lit only after night truly falls. And the nights here come early and stay late. Her hands are cracked and red from days of washing and chopping with water near freezing. Their breath plumes into the air in thick, slow curls. You feel it in the way the elders speak in hushed voices, or dawn tea speak at all. The old rhythms of the year are offbeat. Crow shifts its wings on the bough of a tree and flies, black against the gray. Follow the path down, toward the fields again. The fences are buried to the middle in snow. Single glove lies near the gate. Small wool, a child's. No one comes to retrieve it. The first snow came too early. The last harvest came too late. The stores are thinner than usual. To mend a broken boot with twine and leather scraps, kind of patience that doesn't wait for rescue, only for change. A child presses her hands to the window pane, watching the snow. The kind of silence that once wrapped itself around entire kingdoms. The kind that held court in every barn, every thatched roof, every snow-wrapped wood. It is not cruel, exactly, but it is unflinching. Her breath leaves fog on the glass. A man walks down the lane, hunched under a bundle of sticks. His footsteps leave no sound. Sheep bell tinks somewhere in the distance. Dull, slow, to light a fire with damp bark and hope the embers take. Lanterns begin to glow faintly behind the hides that cover each window. The sky darkens completely, not into black, but into a deep steel gray that swallows shape and distance. The world has drawn its curtains. Night has arrived. The cold deepens. This is the shape of winter here. Not storm and spectacle, but quiet depletion. And still they survive. The root cellar, once full and reassuring, now echoes when tapped. Something has shifted. It's not just a season, but something older, slower, harder to name. A cow licks at a wooden beam, searching for the salt that once lingered there. Only know the signs. Thicker ice on the river. Frozen wells deeper into the morning. The sun rising pale and leaving early. This is not simply a hard year. This is the beginning of a long forgetting, of the warmth that once arrived like clockwork and now hesitates. Chickens nest on rafters, unmoving, their feathers puffed. It's small, stone barely warmer than outside. But there is a strange kind of peace here. Candles flicker in iron holders, dripping slowly. A figure kneels near the altar, old, wrapped in wool, eyes closed, lips moving in silent rhythm. Perhaps a prayer for spring, or perhaps just thanks that the fire hasn't gone out yet. Behind the altar, a simple carving of a saint stands, his nose chipped, his eyes worn smooth. He has seen many winters, even the goat. Once known to chew through rope just for fun, simply stares at nothing. Hunger dulls everything. Cold shapes behavior like stone shapes the riverbed. The child beside her, no older than 6, reaches for the bowl without a word. Neither of them speak. Outside, a tangle of frostbitten laundry hangs stiff on the line. The shirts and tunics don't flutter, simply hang there like ghosts of warmer days. The smell of damp timber mixes with smoke from peat fires drifting low and heavy through the narrow lanes. No one speaks. Even the dogs, thin, shivering, have long since stopped barking. You move slowly, careful not to slip on the frost-glazed ruts in the mud. The world feels muffled, like a breath held too long. The air is thin, brittle. Each breath you take seems to scrape your chest from within. This is not the kind of winter you know from stories with sleigh bells and cheerful firelight. This is a quiet siege, and it has only just begun. You walk along a narrow path lined with uneven stones, their edges glazed with a thin coat of ice. Inside the village, the cottages crouch close together, as if seeking each other's warmth. In one home, a woman sits beside a sputtering hearth. The village has already begun to conserve. Not just food, but motion, voice, even warmth itself. As you pass the livestock shelter, the animals huddle together in silence. But this winter is different. It arrives not only with snow, but with unease. Historians would one day call it the Little Ice Age, a period of centuries where winters deepened and summers shortened. But here no one knows that. You step into the chapel at the edge of the village. Outside, the light is fading. The snow begins to fall again, quietly, steadily. No wind, just the slow accumulation of stillness. You think of what it means to endure, not to overcome, but simply to last. To wrap hands in cloth and ration salt pork. You see it in the eyes of the people. Not panic, not despair, but something else. You return to the village center, and in this hush, in this pale, bitter stillness, you feel something ancient stirring. This is where we begin. The cold does not lift by morning. It only settles deeper, as if the land itself is exhaling more slowly, growing heavier with each passing day. Where once there were rows of stubble and frozen furrows, now there is only a smooth, colorless sheet flat, pristine, untouched except for the faint track of a hair. Broth is made from bones boiled again and again until there's nothing left to give. The elders remember seasons that behaved more gently, when spring followed winter and summer brought certainty. But those rhythms have begun to fray. The storms come earlier. The baker, an older man, his hands thick with old flour scars, knids dough slowly, methodically. He uses less yeast now, less heat. He knows he must stretch every sack of grain through the weeks to come. It dances sideways now, brushing your coat and settling against the creases in every doorway. The houses look smaller than before, more fragile. You notice tiny changes windows covered with skins instead of cloth. Smoke rising only at dusk now, instead of morning. Conservation has become instinct. A ledger hangs near the door, marked with the names of villagers and the loaves they've taken. Some owe coin, some owe labor. But no one has turned away, not yet. They speak of it as duty, as inheritance, as something that has come before and will come again. Children are taught to measure portions with their hands. Elders tell stories of years when even the bark was stripped from trees to make broth. Not with fear, but with memory. The thaw comes late. The sun, when it returns only briefly and seems to hover uncertainly at the horizon.
Ice.
Life reshapes to fit the season. Markets close earlier. Church bells ring softer. The outside world falls away, but now, a line of snow has settled on their shoulders, unmoving. You don't know if they've slept, but you feel their purpose. Prayer, perhaps, or stillness for its own sake.
Sometimes stillness is the only form of protest left.
What matters is firewood. What matters is a root that hasn't frozen. What matters is whether the roof will hold beneath the next snow. A shape, maybe a name, maybe nothing. It melts slowly beneath her touch. Then the glass is blank again. The snow outside thickens, the sky darkens, the cold deepens. You notice the baker's eyes lingering on the empty shelves, the blank spaces where baskets once overflowed. He's not a man given to panic, but even he feels it, the turning. When summer failed to ripen the fields and winter overstayed its welcome, did they blame the sky, the king themselves? Or did they, like these villagers, simply go quieter, closer to the fire, and begin to plan smaller lives? She snaps them off the eaves carefully, as though gathering herbs. Inside her cottage, she melts them for water, saving the effort of breaking through the frozen well. This is what winter teaches, not grand solutions, but quiet adjustments. Not endurance through strength, but through softness, through knowing when to bend. Even time seems less reliable now, as if the landscape could shatter if touched too quickly. What lies within is not spirit, but survival. Villagers speak in whispers around it. How many sacks remain? How long can they be stretched? You see a boy posted nearby, tasked with watching. Not guarding, exactly, but witnessing. Silent acknowledgement that what's inside is more precious than gold. The snow is deep enough now to reach the tops of boots. Trees sag under its weight, and the quiet ever-present presses in closer. It is a soundless season. Even the livestock seem to breathe less. The people don't speak of hunger, not yet, but you see it in how they eat. Silently, slowly, chewing each mouthful as if it must last the entire day. A long, uneven cooling that crept across Europe from the 14th to the 19th century. But for the people living it, there were no terms, only signs. Crops failing where they once thrived. Rivers freezing solid. Fish vanishing. Entire villages snowed in before autumn ended. It was not a single moment, but a long accumulation of discomfort. And like the snow, It fell softly at first, then all at once. A girl carries a basket of turnips, her breath coming in little clouds. Her hands tremble beneath her mittens. She walks slowly, conserving even motion. In this world, even moving feels like a decision. Scarecrow still stands near the fence, its straw arms stiff with ice, its sackcloth face peeled by wind. No birds perch there now. The crops it once guarded are long gone, and no thief remains but the cold. The sky remains the same muted gray, and the snow finds steady, relentless builds quietly on every surface. You feel it in the bones of the village now. A quiet awareness, unspoken yet shared, that this winter will not pass quickly, that this season does not simply visit but lingers. You pass the same field you saw the night before, but now it seems transformed. Inside the cottages, changes happen slowly. Bread becomes thinner. Milk is replaced with water. And above all of it, there is the sense that something has shifted, not just the weather, but the pattern of the world itself. Scholars, centuries later, would give it a name: the Little Ice Age. You step into the bakery at the far end of the village. The fire still burns here, but faintly. There is a faint smell of scorched crust and something sweet, but old maybe apples, long dried and baked weeks ago. Outside again, the snow begins to shift in the wind. Not heavy, but persistent. Near the edge of the village, an older woman collects icicles in a basket. There's a stillness in the air, but also something brittle. You wander toward the old granary, its doors chained shut with thick rope and rusted iron. This building matters more than the church now. Still, the villagers do not speak of it as disaster. What's most striking is not the cold itself, but how everything bends around it. You stop near the chapel again, where you saw the kneeling figure the night before. The same person sits, their same cloak, same stillness. A question lingers in your mind as night begins to rise again. What did the first people think when the seasons stopped making sense? You watch a girl carve something into the frost on the window pane. The cold deepens, yes, but it is hunger now that sharpens the air. A silence heavier than snow begins to fall over the village, not from cold alone, but from empty pans and unlit ovens. It enters not just the belly, but the walls, the air. The glances pass between those who share too little. The hunger lives here now, just as surely as the frost. You step through the narrow frame of a low cottage near the edge of the village. Inside, the walls are dark with soot and thyme, and the thatched ceiling bows low, shedding fine drifts of hay whenever the wind sighs against it. An old man lies beneath 3 woolen cloaks, his hands folded, his breath shallow. A younger woman, his daughter, perhaps sits beside him, feeding the fire with thin twigs. The woodpile is gone. These are the ends of broom handles, broken combs, whatever scrap can catch a spark. She watches the flames with the kind of focus that means calculation. How long it must last. How long before she must burn the stool. When she looks up, her cheeks are hollow. You can see the sharp lines where skin once held fullness. No accusations. Everyone suffers the same, if not equally. The reeve no longer collects taxes. The smith has stopped charging for repairs. Her mother boils sage and onion, pours the broth slowly over flatbread. But the child grows quiet and then still, not to cut wood. The wood is gone. He carries a rope, too. There are rumors of rabbits, though none have been seen in weeks. Still he goes. Not with hope, just with habit. He leaves footprints in the snow. They feel slowly behind him. It only changes shape, becoming something woven into the walls, the rituals, the breath of every sleeping child. By morning, he'll be gone. There is no burial. Not yet. The ground is too hard. Only the quiet adjustments of people who have known hard seasons before. You pass the woman with the broth again. She's eating now, slowly, head bowed. 1 spoonful at a time. She pauses between each as if listening to something. Not the wind, not the fire. Something inside her. Something old. The instinct to last. You feel the rhythm of it. A slowing, a thinning, but not a breaking. The fire burns low, yes. But it still burns. Someone still stirs the pot. Someone still sings a lullaby into the dark, even if the words no longer rhyme. This, too, is a kind of defiance. Her body is wrapped and kept in the storeroom where it stays cold. The village waits for a thaw. Grief is not loud here. It sits beside the hunger, equally quiet. They know that in a winter like this, silver means less than soup. And those with more, those who rationed better or had stronger harvests have begun to share. Not out of charity, but out of necessity. Or if the village loses too many, who will plant the spring? She doesn't smile, but she nods just once, and then turns away, walking carefully over the frozen path. Her skirt is patched in 5 places. None of the stitches match. Hunger leaves no time for vanity. Not here, not now. The family butchered their last chicken in early December. Every item in the home becomes a question. Can it be eaten? Inside, 3 siblings sit on the floor, scraping crumbs from an old bread cloth. Their movements are careful, deliberate. Not greedy. This is not greed. This is reverence. Crumbs can be pressed together with lard to make dumplings, or dropped into broth to thicken it, or simply eaten one by one, as if each one matters, because each one does. Can it be burned? Can it be traded for something that fills the stomach, if only for an hour? The answers come slower each day. The pantry is bare. He bakes only every 3rd day. His flour stores have shrunk to nearly nothing, and his wife spends hours picking stray grains from old sacks. The priest leads by candlelight now, wrapped in wool beneath his robes. His voice cracks when he reads, and some say his sermons are shorter, not for lack of faith, but for lack of energy. Even devotion bends before hunger. A small bowl sits at the altar meant for offerings, though now it mostly holds dried herbs and a few small bones gifts, perhaps for the saints to consider. The bread now is dark, dense, and tastes faintly of mold, but it is still bread. Villagers queue in silence when the bell tolls, each holding their cloth or basket, offering what they can in trade. A woman offers a skein of wool. A man brings a carved spoon. A boy trades a story for a crust. The salt barrel rings when tapped. The children no longer ask when supper will be ready. They know better. Its bones have been boiled twice, then once more with barley husks and bitter herbs. The flavor is not pleasant, but it is familiar. Familiarity matters when fullness is no longer possible. A fire burns low in the hearth more, ash than flame ant. Beside it sits a woman and her son. He's shaping it into something, perhaps a spindle, perhaps just keeping his hands busy to quiet the emptiness inside. Work helps. Movement is a kind of forgetting. But the smell of the weak broth drifts through the room, and his stomach answers with a low, hollow sound. No one comments. Hunger makes no enemy of pride here. The boy clutches a shallow bowl between his hands. It steams faintly, but the broth inside is colorless. On days like these, people do not speak unless they must. Even the animals have grown quieter. The hens no longer lay. The cows give less milk, or none at all. A dog curls beside a cold chimney and does not rise, even when footsteps pass. Its ribs show through its fur. No one scolds it. There is no energy for scolding now. The only sound in the room is the soft tap of his spoon against wood. The stew, if it can be called it, is made from boiled cabbage leaves, and the last of the pickled turnip ends, thinned with melted snow. There is no meat left. Across the room, a man sits working a small stone against a length of worn wood. Outside, the sun fails to rise fully. It hangs in the sky like a faded coin, barely warming the pale roofs. In another cottage nearby, the hearth is colder still. This is a different kind of winter now. Not just cold, but cost. You walk past a window where condensation beads the glass. The village baker, once a symbol of warmth, now closes his shutters more often. In the chapel, prayers grow more urgent, but never louder. You pause at the edge of a shared well. A woman draws water slowly, her arms trembling from the weight of the pail. There is no blame passed in this village. Still, despite the sharing, the losses come. A girl falls ill. At dusk, a father walks to the edge of the forest with an axe, and yet there is no collapse, no riot. Night arrives earlier now. The sun falls before the candles are even lit, and as the snow settles again across the rooftops and fields, the hunger stays. It does not pass. But hunger, like cold, does not stop at the edge of the village. It travels further, slipping past hedgerows, sliding down frozen hillsides, and climbing slowly, relentlessly, toward the halls of stone and velvet. The fire may burn brighter in a manor house, and the bread may be finer. But even in castles, winter finds its way through the cracks. Great fires roar in the hearths, but their warmth does not reach the corners. The stone floor remains icy even beneath layers of rushes and carpets. Servants move swiftly, their breath visible, cloaks tight around their shoulders. He slips slightly on the stone, steadies himself, and moves on. In the kitchens, the scullery maids wrap cloth around their hands to avoid the icy sting of water in the basins. The walls sweat with cold and candle flames tremble in their sconces. Behind one heavy oak door, a child coughs. Thin, dry, rasping. A nurse sits nearby, rocking slowly. The fire in the room is no more than a glow, meaning the chill comes first in rumor, in small shifts of abundance, in things not said at table, and then slowly it takes hold of them too, not by force, but by erosion. A little less again, till comfort becomes caution. She dips a cloth into warm water and presses it to the child's lips. She wraps herself in wool and steps softly through the corridor. The drawbridge groans under its own weight. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. Not close, not yet, but nearer than last week. The guards hear it and say nothing. Her slippers do not muffle the cold of the floor. She walks to the kitchens, where only embers remain. She kneels before the fire and stirs the ash until it glows again. Then, from a basket, she pulls a crust of bread, stale, hardened. She softens it in a bowl of water, warms it with her hands, and eats slowly, silently, alone. There is no feast here, it's just the instinct to keep going. Outside, the snow falls more thickly. No physician will arrive tonight, no herbs, no ointments, only patience and hope. Bread is baked daily, but the flour is mixed with ground peas and old oats. Below, the village you left earlier still smolders with faint light. The castle above may stand higher, may wear its stone more proudly, but the winter touches both. Hunger and cold do not bow to status. They slip through cracks, cling to breath, whisper into every room, and they do not leave when asked. One cook slices carrots so thin you can see light through them. The soup, when served, is rich in smell, but light in weight. They carry jugs of warm wine, trays of bread, bowls of roasted root vegetables, and yet their fingers tremble. That the Lord is still a man of generosity and means. At the evening meal, platters are carried in and placed with ceremony. He wears wool beneath his vestments now, and a heavy mantle over his shoulders. He prays not just for spring, but for the bread to stretch, for the ice to crack, for the people below the hill to last the season. His breath fogs as he speaks the Latin words. A rat skitters across the stones behind him. Even the sacred must share its space with the small hungers of the world. A roasted goose, one of the last, is brought forth. Its skin golden, but its size modest. No one complains aloud, but the signs are there. The steward no longer speaks of summer festivals. The chamberlain has sold 2 silver candlesticks to a traveling merchant. The lady of the house spends more time near the fire, less time in the garden, which lies buried now beneath snow and memory. And the Lord, once quick to laugh, now stands often at the window, staring toward the horizon, where no riders come. A single bowl of preserved cherries sits beside it, drawn from a cellar that once held dozens. Wine is poured, conversation is light, but every glance is watchful, every smile a little tighter than the last. The food is not abundant here either, only better arranged. Even kings shiver. You follow a narrow road that winds upward through a frozen wood, its path hard with ruts from carts long since stopped. The pigs in the lower pens were slaughtered early, and their meat salted with urgency. A shipment of honey never arrived. The roads are frozen, the bridges cracked, the wagons lost or simply missing. News travels slower than hunger. And though no one says it aloud, they all know. There is less this year. On either side, trees stand like sentinels, bare and pale, their branches etched with hoarfrost. At the top of the hill, a gray keep rises from the snow-covered land, its towers hunched beneath a leaden sky. The castle walls are thick, but the wind still finds them, and within, the cold settles like a guest who has overstayed its welcome. Inside the stone halls, tapestries flutter faintly in the draught. In the great hall, a noblewoman sits beside the fire, her chair piled with furs. Her hands, gloved in fine wool, hold a silver goblet, but she does not drink. Her gaze is fixed on the frost collecting on the far window, where the sun struggles to pierce the clouds. She is young still, but her eyes carry something older, a weariness that does not come from hardship, but from observation. The cold she feels is not the sudden shock of exposure, but the creeping chill of power slipping quietly out of reach. Even here, in this place of relative wealth, the season shows its weight. The larder is locked.
Ow.
The steward measures wine with a careful eye. A kitchen boy runs through the gallery, his cheeks red from the cold, a stack of plates clutched against his chest. Still, the table must be set. The illusion of feast maintained. Guests must believe the manor is untouched by scarcity. You pass through a corridor where the wind whistles between the stones. In the chapel wing, the priest kneels before a dim altar. Among the noble household, silence becomes a kind of etiquette. There is a saying whispered by one of the older maids: when the poor feel winter, the rich smell it first. One night, the noblewoman from the great hall rises in the dark. Outside, the castle walls bear streaks of ice, glinting in the moonlight. You stand in a tower room now, looking out across the valley. The cold in the castle is quieter than in the village, but it is no less real. It simply wears finer clothes. The cold in the castle lingers, but it is no longer the only quiet threat. In the corners of each room, in the shallow hollows of breath and sleep, another silence grows. Heavier, thicker, slower. It is the hush of illness. First a cough behind a closed door, then a bowl of water left untouched, then the sound of footsteps retreating instead of approaching. No cries, no alarm, just a shift, barely noticed, like dust on the edge of a candle flame. You return to the village below, where the snow now lies deeper than a man's knee and paths are carved, not with shovels, but by footsteps worn in repetition. The air is sharp today, still and brittle. Your breath clouds thick and low. Smoke rises from fewer chimneys now. She is helped to her feet, but does not speak. Her eyes linger too long on the logs as they burn. Her youngest son has not left his bed in 3 days. He is taken to sleeping near the altar, claiming it's for warmth, though everyone knows it's to be near the crucifix. A pile of ashes beneath the chimney shows the fire went out 2 nights ago. He carries a satchel of powders and a pouch of dried mushrooms. He says little, but lights incense in each room, drawing symbols in chalk on the stones. He checks pulses. He sniffs breath. A kind of quiet understanding that in winters like these, breath grows thin. That illness comes not like a storm, but like a shadow, growing longer as the light fades. He leaves tinctures of honey, camphor, wine. No one asks questions. They only nod. Medicine and faith have blurred now. Both taste bitter. No one enters, not because they are forgotten, but because everyone remembers too well. Silence can be a warning. Walks the halls as if memorizing the paintings before they vanish. He wears fur not for vanity, but because his hands will not stop shaking. He dismisses half the servants, saying it is for economy. But everyone knows it is for distance. Fewer hands, fewer chances. He drinks tea brewed from dried mint and linden flowers, soothes the throat but does little else. He reads from the book of ours with a quieter voice now. Girl lies wrapped in a wool blanket, her face flushed, eyes closed. A bird rests on the roofline, feathers puffed, and it lifts and vanishes into the trees. Her sister sits beside her, spooning broth from a clay bowl, 1 drip at a time. She does not cry. She only feeds carefully, carefully, as if timing each drop to the beat of her sister's heart. The fire crackles softly. It is the only sound in the room. It's not because he doubts, but because he's tired. She visits him, pressing warm cloths to his chest, whispering lullabies once meant for summer nights. The boy's skin is damp and cold at once. He does not respond. The nurse no longer sings. By morning, she is gone. Not dead, only vanished. Her name is not spoken again. Another servant begins coughing during evening prayers. He is sent to the outer storeroom to rest, but no one brings food. By the 3rd day, the store remains locked, and the only sound within is breathing, slow and shallow. The firewood has grown scarce, and some choose to stay beneath furs instead, hoping their own heat will be enough. But beneath that stillness, something else simmers. Fever. It mutes footsteps, muffles cries. The sound of a body falling becomes no louder than a branch snapping beneath frost. Illness in winter does not need announcement. It moves without parade, settling into lungs like dust and rafters. By the time it is noticed, it has already made a home. In a cottage near the well, a boy lies curled beside a hearth that has gone to embers. His cheeks are flushed, not from cold, but from something internal, something burning too hot for winter. Cloth rests on his forehead. His mother stirs a pot slowly, mixing wild garlic with vinegar and melted snow. The only remedy she knows. She hums beneath her breath, not a song, but a rhythm, like rocking, like waiting. The boy does not move. Across the road, a man coughs into a cloth behind a shuttered window. The sound is deep, wet, and final. He does not rise from his chair. A neighbor comes and goes, leaving a bundle of twigs near the door. No words are exchanged. They both know speaking wastes air. He lights a small fire carefully, as if afraid it might notice him. The cough comes again, softer now. He wipes his mouth. The cloth is stained. There is no doctor here, only the memory of one. He passed through months ago, a thin man with a horse and a case of tools. He left before the snows, and no one has seen him since. In his place there are herbs, elder bark, sage, nettle, crushed into poultices, steeped into teas, burned in clay bowls to ward off breath-borne spirits. No one knows if they work. But rituals hold power, even when reason fails. In the castle, the illness climbs stairs. A maid collapses in the corridor outside the steward's room, her tray crashing against the stone. The lady of the house begins to wear gloves indoors. She moves less, speaks softly. And outside, the snow keeps falling. clean and perfect, as if unaware of the weight it carries. In the village chapel, prayers grow shorter. The priest himself coughs between phrases. One cottage remains entirely quiet. You pass by it, noting that the snow at its doorstep is undisturbed. The curtains have not been moved in days. In the manor, the physician finally arrives. Not the one they hoped for, but a traveling apothecary, thin as a reed and wearing 3 cloaks. The Lord himself grows pale. He eats less, sleeps less. And still, it is not panic that rules these spaces. It is resignation. You step into one more cottage before nightfall. Outside, the wind returns. It brushes the snow into swirls across the lanes, erasing footprints by morning. The sky is colorless. Winter holds its breath. The breath of winter grows thinner, but it is not mercy. Yet the faces it left behind now carry something heavier than fever, the long, hollow weight of hunger. What once were fields are now wide sheets of hardened soil, buried beneath half a meter of frost. No furrows remain, no furrowed shoots, not even the memory of green. It's as if the land itself has forgotten how to yield. Nothing moves here, not even crows, not the ordinary kind, not the growl of an empty stomach before supper. The Lord's household now takes supper with fewer candles lit. One servant lays out loaves cut thinner each night. Something stranger stirs, not just the tightening of belts, but the loosening of boundaries. Old taboos blur. Not all who go out for food return with it. Some do not return at all. A boy follows rabbit tracks too far into the woods. Grandmother leaves to collect pine needles and is found days later, curled beneath a tree, her fingers stained green. In whispered corners, a boy traps mice in clay pots, baited with oats soaked from last year's rain barrel. He cleans them carefully, roasts them with wild mustard. He feeds his younger sister first, then himself, and buries the bones. Another family gathers moss and presses it into cakes, dried in the sun when the sun appears. They eat it slowly, binds the stomach. A man stands in his doorway with a bowl, collecting it for soup. He watches the sky, not for answers, but for signs. A change in color, a break in the clouds, anything. The flakes land on his lashes. He does not blink. Some speak of darker hungers. In one cottage, people share, not from charity, but from mutual need. One man with a half bag of oats gives a scoop to his neighbor in exchange for nettle roots. A woman trades her comb for soup. The smith repairs pots in return for a single egg, found cracked but still usable. Their daughter sleeps near the hearth, mouth open slightly. Her ribs show now, but she dreams still. And sometimes that is enough. Hunger strips away pride, but it leaves behind something else. A strange solidarity, silence made of shared struggle. The bones found in the hearth are not from any animal known to the village. No one speaks of it again. It is no longer trusted. A source of suspicion, of fear. A burial place for crops, for hope, for those who didn't last the week. A girl stands near a frozen furrow whispering to it. Not prayer, not pleading, just sound. As if to remind it she is still here. That someone remembers what it once gave. They simply board the door and leave it to the snow. A family cooks a crow caught in the rafters. Another grinds dried leather into shavings, soaked and boiled until it softens. They eat it with herbs, call it stew, near the riverbank. A man unearths the body of a pig buried last season. It smells wrong, but he wipes the mold away and burns it black over fire. He does not die. There's follow. The lady speaks of spring, but with a voice grown pale. Behind the kitchen doors, even scraps are argued over. Not in anger, but in calculation. The cook keeps onion skins and carrot peels now. They can flavor broth. One carrot sliced across 3 pots. One ham bone boiled 5 times, then gnawed. This is the deeper kind. The kind that sharpens the ribs and dulls the eyes. It makes the world seem smaller with each passing day. She scrapes it with a knife, folding the inner layer into a cloth. It will be dried, ground, boiled into a bitter paste. Something that fills the mouth if not the belly. It's not nourishing. It's not safe. He offers bread with communion, cut thinner than paper. Not faith, not faith. There are no more candles lit at the altar. The oil ran out last week. The sacred flame is now the fire in his brazier, where he burns reeds and old hymnals. God, he says, understands practicality, but it is something. Beside her, a child chews on a lump of raw potato, unwashed, peeled with fingers. Someone tried to break in, but failed. The village reeve does not investigate. He understands. What grain remains inside is already promised. A woman sits near the door, eyes closed, humming faintly. She doesn't wait for grain. She simply sits where it once was, as if memory might be enough. His face is blank, not from lack of feeling, but from the conservation of it. Even expression uses energy now. The cold may have loosened its grip for a moment, but the hunger has only grown bolder in its place. It alters movement, conversation, memory. People forget the taste of fat, of butter, of sweetness. They forget the impulse to linger. They speak less. They listen more, especially for rumors. Of grain in another town, of a caravan returning, of a nobleman with a soft heart. Such stories never hold long. The snow eats them like footprints. You follow a worn path beyond the village now, past the last clustered cottages where the farmland begins. Or used to begin.
Yeah.
A man stands at the edge of a once productive plot, staring out across the frozen expanse. His boots sink into old snow. His hands hang limp at his sides. He does not dig. There is nothing left to dig for. Last year's barley crop failed beneath unseasonable rains, followed by frost before harvest. What was gathered rotted in cellars, bloated and blackened. The ground is angry now, he says, or maybe simply exhausted. Closer to the village, a woman picks through the margins of a hedgerow, gathering bark from young trees. The famine, though no one calls it that yet, changes more than meals. In the manor. Back in the village, but famine has a way of darkening the mind. The priest preaches hope, though his voice has grown thin. You pass the old granary once more. It is locked, but the boards show signs of recent tampering. Some find new routines in their desperation. And still, the village does not fracture. Not yet. The ground, once giver of life, has become something else. Snow falls again that evening, softly, as always. Inside his home, his wife lights a small fire using dried apple branches saved since autumn. She stirs a pot. The broth is thin, but warm, outside. The village sinks deeper into white.
And yet, even the hungriest winter cannot swallow everything. For a brief moment, a flicker between cold days and colder nights. Something unexpected rises. Not warmth, not food, but laughter. Against all logic, against hunger, and against the heavy hush of the snow, the village remembers how to celebrate. Not in grand feasts or gilded robes, but in the strange ancient ritual of turning the world upside down. If only for a single day. You sense it first, not through sound, but color. In the midst of the gray world, someone hangs a scrap of red cloth from a wooden beam, then another. The children mock their elders. The village fool wears a crown, and for a few brief hours, the world forgets its suffering and plays at joy. The noble woman watches from a balcony wrapped in fur. A farmer is called bishop and told to bless the pigs. But for a few hours, they are folded away, like coats left at the chapel door. A girl with frostbitten fingers dances with her brother in a circle. Root cakes, apple core, baked in ashes. Someone brings a jug of thin cider, half frozen, and passes it around. No one asks where it came from. No one hoards. The pots stop clanging. The music fades. The rolls are returned. Gently, the queen becomes midwife again. The bishop becomes farmer. The fool, just a man. But something stays behind. A warmth, not from fire, but from togetherness, from defiance, from memory. She records the day's events, not as comedy, but as grace. She knows how the villagers, though starved and thin, found enough inside themselves to make a crown from straw and a kingdom from snow. She folds the letter, seals it, and places it in a box with others. Records not of war or harvest, but of humanity. Each sip is taken slowly, savored, not for flavor, but for meaning. But tonight, they do not eat in silence. They speak. They remember stories. They repeat the trial's best lines. They imitate the Child King's royal command. And they smile. A single lantern flickers beside the chapel. The streets are quiet again, but the hush is softer now. Not fearful, not empty, just resting. Their boots are mismatched, their cheeks red, but their eyes are bright. An old man plays a whistle carved from bone. A bundle of sticks dressed in cloth is accused of stealing all the warmth from the land. Witnesses are called. A pig snorts in testimony. A child recites an oath in gibberish. The stick bundle is found guilty, then banished in a wagon toward the edge of the field. More laughter, more applause. The tune is crooked, full of sharp turns and sudden starts, but it lifts the crowd. The snow swirls gently, like confetti. In their place, foolishness, ritual, absurdity. A defense against despair that doesn't try to defeat it, only to outlast it. A midwife becomes queen for the day and orders the blacksmith to sing. He does, tunelessly but with gusto. Even the priest joins in, solemnly anointing a loaf of bread with melted tallow and declaring it holy. The laughter comes again, not forced, but earned. She does not laugh, but she smiles. A small, genuine thing. She sends down a servant with a basket of apples, bruised but sweet. They are received with mock ceremony by the village fool, who declares them tribute from the northern kingdom. Children chase each other across the snow, clutching fruit in mittened hands. For once, no one scolds them. A crown made of straw appears on a fence post. Someone beats a drum made from an old ale barrel. Someone else clangs two pots together in rhythm. Not sweet, not rich, just bread with a touch of dried fruit pressed inside. He offers one to the boy king first. The rest are shared. There's no coin exchange, only nods. And thanks for many, it is the first piece of bread they've tasted in days, not made from bark or lentils. And it tastes impossibly like joy. A woman in patched skirts shouts, orders in Latin man pretends to faint with dramatic flair when given orders by the child king. There is laughter, real and unguarded. It hangs in the air like breath, visible and fleeting. A bull, no older than 8, is named King of Misrule and lifted onto a makeshift throne. A broken cart covered in linens. He is draped in rags, painted with soot and ash. A string of dried turnips becomes his necklace. He is given a wooden spoon for a scepter and a cabbage leaf for his seal. And he grins wide and gap-toothed, as if none of the hunger matters today. In a village where shoes are worn through and soup is stretched with moss, this feels absurd. Yet there it is, a signal of beginning. It is the day of the Feast of Once each year, on the eve of Epiphany, the old customs return. The ones older than kings, older than scripture. The rules bend. The poor become lords. At dawn, a procession begins. Not solemn, not sacred, but straight. Villagers gather in what used to be the market square. Now a shallow bowl of snow and slush. The baker, long silent behind shuttered windows, emerges with a tray of misshapen rolls. At the manor above, the celebration is viewed with polite curiosity. The rules of the world, who serves, who owns, who leads, are suspended gently. No one forgets the cold. No one forgets the hunger. You walk among them, watching closely. A strange feast is laid on the snow. A wheel of cheese, long aged and cracked. As the day wanes, a mock trial is held. But as the light dims, the place softens. The child king is lifted down from his throne, now dozing in the arms of a cousin. Back in their homes, people eat what remains of the feast. Bread crusts, a spoon of cider, an apple peel. It is not much. Up in the manor, the noblewoman writes a letter by candlelight. By midnight, the fire in the village center has died to ash. And outside, the snow continues its gentle fall, unaware of the joy it failed to suppress.
When the laughter fades and the masks are folded away, what remains is the memory of warmth. Not from fire or feast, but from one another. That evening, while the village settles once more into its hush, while boots are placed by the hearth and spoons, rest clean in bowls, licked dry, the manor house above remains quietly lit. It is not louder nor brighter than before. Then, salted pork trimmed with her own initials stamped into wax, sent quietly down the hill in carts covered in cloth. She does not attend the deliveries. She does not ask for thanks. He no longer bows stiffly, steps beside the cutting board, places her hands upon it. Together, they read the tally marks on the wall, carved by the previous keeper of the house long before her time. She runs her fingers over one mark in particular, marked with the year of a great frost. Her father spoke of that year in his letters, how the manor nearly emptied. His idea of mercy was discipline. Lady Margaret walks a gentler path, but with no less certainty. Where he withheld to preserve status, she gives to preserve the system itself. She writes of the frost still deepening, the faces thinning, the ways in which hunger has taught her to listen more closely. She does not speak of legacy, only of the present, of how much remains, of how much must be kept aside for spring. She writes, folds the paper, ties it with ribbon, and places it in the box beside the letter from the day of the feast. Quiet history, recorded not by war, but by care. and yet there is warmth in her eyes as she watches the firelight dance along the banisters. She has seen what starvation does. It's not just to the body, but to trust. To bonds, she will not preside over a silent hill. How they lit fires in every corridor just to keep the beams from cracking. She does not enter their home, only leaves a bundle of soap, cloth, and oats at the threshold. But as she turns to go, the girl's voice calls after her. Soft, uncertain, then stronger. Her candle gutters in the wind that slips through the cracks. She closes the shutters herself. There is dignity in doing things without being asked, tending what is near. She lifts the wool cloak from its hook and places it around her shoulders. Tomorrow will be colder, the steward says. But tomorrow will come. Thank you. Lady Margaret turns, offers a nod, and smiles. Not widely, but with something true. It is the first time the child has spoken to her. She looks at the sacks of barley and rye stacked in the corners now. Enough, perhaps, but not endless. Nothing is. They discuss lentils, root vegetables, honey, gone to sugar. He tells her how many sacks remain. She asks how many mouths they might feed, not just here in the house, but down the hill too. Her prayers are silent, shaped only in breath. The candles there are fewer now. She allows herself no incense, no choirs. Her humility is not performance, it is precise. As she kneels, a maid leaves a parcel near the door. Wool mittens, mended carefully. She will carry them down herself tomorrow, along with the basket of dried leeks wrapped in linen. She prefers to deliver at least one offering personally each week, not to be seen, but to see. Her tone is never demanding. It is a tone of weather, observant, inevitable. She does not ask if they will continue sharing. She asks how best to do it. The villagers receive the food as they receive snowfall, with quiet, the ritual, and with a glance to the sky that says more than words. What matters is not the gesture's size, but its rhythm. It comes again and again, enough to matter. It's never too much to draw envy. The stores will open again, a little at a time. No fanfare, speech. Just cloth bags left in trusted hands. It is not charity, she says. It is continuity. The village cannot vanish, because if it does, who will tend the fields when the snow lifts? Who will bring wool to the looms? Cider to the cellars? Will ring the chapel bell? Kindness, in her voice, is not sentiment. It is infrastructure, and she carries it as such. She understands this balance, but something has changed. Not in the walls or windows, but in the woman who watches the snow from her writing table, a candle flickering near her hands. Lady Margaret, whose name the children once whispered with uncertainty, has become something of a presence in recent weeks. Not dramatic, not declared, but consistent. Her figure has been seen more often walking the inner courtyards wrapped in wool, speaking softly to the steward, standing longer by the kitchen hearth, watching. She was never cruel, never aloof. But until this winter, she had been distant in the way that stone towers often are. Seen, respected, untouched. Now, something in her has softened. Or perhaps the hunger has merely revealed what was always there. It began with the apples, then sacks of dried peas. This morning, she walks the inner corridor of the manor, her shoes soft on the stone. She pauses beside a narrow window, watching as a boy in the village below carries a basket larger than his frame across the snow. His footprints disappear behind him. Snow erases all things, except perhaps memory. Her maid approaches with a fur-lined cloak, but Margaret does not take it. She prefers to feel the cold, just for a moment, to remember what it means to lack something. In the manor kitchens, the head cook greets her without alarm. By mid-morning, she stands beside the steward in the storage cellar. She turns to the steward and speaks quietly. Her instructions are clear, but later, she kneels at the chapel within the manor grounds. In the village, the memory of her father lingers. A colder man, respected but seldom loved. His house was always shut in winter, his cellars always guarded. On the third day after the Feast of Misrule, she visits the family of the girl who danced with her brother in the snow. That night, in her study, she writes again. Not to kings or distant relatives, but to herself. The snow begins again, light but steady. Lady Margaret's quiet generosity moves like ripples on a frozen pond. Unseen by most, but felt in widening circles. And in one small cottage near the edge of the village, where the snow falls hardest and the light fades fastest. She once made soaps and tinctures from herbs grown behind her house. Years ago, when the sun still touched her windows before noon and her knees still carried her easily to the river. No tea, no broth. Still she drinks it, not for comfort but for the ritual. To be upright, to hold the cup, to remember what it means to endure. She was never wealthy, but she was known. for the way her home always smelled of lavender and lye, for the songs she hummed as she worked. But this winter has been crueler than most. Her sons are gone, taken by wars long past, no older than 10. Then steps aside. His cheeks are flushed from the cold, his coat too large. Then turns to the fire. Places a small cloth pouch beside the fire. Dried peas, a scrap of onion, a pinch of salt. For my mother, he says softly. She said you'd know what to do. Then he nods once as if his task is complete, and walks back out into the snow, leaving the door ajar behind him. He simply points to the sky, where clouds are clearing and stars blink through the black. She nods. He hands her another bundle of wood. She places a folded cloth in his coat pocket. Lavender sprigs sewn inside, one of the last things she made. Sorts the dried beans she's kept in a jar for too long. The hunger is still there, the cold remains, but something in her spine is straighter, something in her breath stronger. He does not smile this time. He just bows quickly and disappears into the night. Some arrive when no one is watching, but in his arms he holds firewood. Real wood, thick and dry, bundled in twine. He says nothing at first. He simply offers it forward as though the gesture explains itself. Her hands are stiff, her legs weak. The basket she once used for gathering now rests empty beside the hearth, and the logs she split last autumn have burned down to one last splintered piece, too small to last the night. Kneels at the hearth, stacks the wood carefully, one piece at a time, and this time adding the peas, the onion, the salt. The smell, though faint, fills the room with memory. She remembers her son's voice at 7. The way her husband once stacked wood in perfect towers. The rhythm of winter, when it was still a cycle, not a sentence. As she is seated near the hearth, sipping slowly from a wooden bowl. Her blanket is wrapped around her feet. The fire dances steady and tall. Outside, the snow continues to fall, but it is no longer the only presence in her home. There is warmth now, the memory of kindness. They upright and cradled by heat. No dreams, only breath, slow and steady. Bit of flax, and flint from his coat pocket to coax a new flame into being. He blows gently. The fire catches, grows, warms. He does not look at her until the blaze dances tall once more. Then finally he smiles, not with triumph, but with a kind of quiet relief. The warmth she helped preserve has begun to reach places even she cannot see. Here, tucked beneath a sagging roof and behind a warped wooden door, an old widow lies curled beneath a threadbare quilt, her fire now little more than ash. The silence in her home is complete, gold and orange. The walls feel closer, the air easier to breathe. She kneels slowly, carefully, and stirs the embers with an old iron rod. She adds 2 more logs, watches them catch. Something in her too. Catches, not flame, but will. Her name is Brita. She moves slowly, wrapping another shawl around her shoulders, though it does little against the cold. The kettle on the hearth holds only warm water. Outside, the snow thickens. The wind rattles the shutters. She draws her blanket tighter and stares into the faint orange glow that remains. She rises with effort, boils the rest of the soup, and sets a bowl aside. She places it on a ledge outside her window, where she used to leave scraps for the birds. Perhaps someone else will find it. Perhaps the boy will return. Either way, she is part of the rhythm again, giving, not only waiting. The flame flickers, then dies. No sound. Just the sigh of smoke, curling upward and vanishing into shadow. She does not cry. Brita has passed beyond tears. She opens her eyes, uncertain if she has dreamed it. The third knock comes as the wind pulls at the doorframe. Brita lifts herself slowly, joints creaking, breath caught. She opens the latch. She simply lays back, folds her hands across her chest, and closes her eyes. Then, a knock. Soft at first, almost imagined, then again firmer. A boy stands there. Brita blinks. He enters without fanfare. She offers him a stool. Brita closes it gently. The room glows now. She boils water again. By nightfall, she sleeps in her chair that night. In the morning, that evening, a quiet knock comes once more. This time, the boy does not speak. The snow covers his tracks within minutes. And yet, for Brita, the world has changed. She adds 2 more logs to the fire, sharpens a knife. Not every rescue needs to be dramatic. Some come with soup and twine. The fire in Brita's hearth crackled into morning, and outside her window, the sky began to lift, not into brightness, but into something less heavy. Somewhere beyond her cottage, in the winding lanes of the village, where the cold pressed in from the hills and hunger still coiled through empty fields, another flame burned quietly. Its roof sags slightly from long winters past, and its bells have not rung in many weeks. Not from neglect, but from reverence for quiet. Here the cold still enters, but it is met with order. The beds are straw-stuffed sacks covered in linen, each one tucked into a narrow stall lined with woolen curtains. No one moans. No one cries out. Those who come here know how to wait in silence. As the monks in turn know how to listen without words. The trimming of candle wicks. It is in its own way devotion. It's not only to God but to the fragile dignity of those who have nothing left but their breath. These monks know hunger too. They eat only twice each day, and even then only what has been shared or grown within the grounds. Still frozen, still weeks from planting, but beneath the crust, he believes, something waits. It always does. But what they have, they portion carefully. They do not hoard. They do not hesitate. He adds crushed garlic, dried mint, a touch of vinegar. The scent is sharp, but nourishing. Not with despair, but with rhythm. Chores, hymns, tasks that do not depend on mood. The chapel is lit with beeswax candles, and their shadows stretch across the flagstones like slow-moving tides. Their chant is soft, not mournful, but low and rooted, like a tree's breath beneath snow. The boy from the kitchen sits at the back. He listens, not to the words, but to the sound of them, the hum, the warmth in it. He leans his head against the wall and closes his eyes. Where the village relies on adaptation and the manor on ration, the monastery relies on devotion, not blind, but intentional. They expect the cold, they expect suffering, but they meet both with readiness. Another monk slices stale bread and places the pieces on a board warmed by the oven-esque bricks. A child found alone on the road days ago watches from the doorway. He has not spoken yet. But when handed a bowl, he holds it close with both hands and nods, a gesture heavier than speech. Candles are lit in strict rhythm. Fires are banked and watched. No word is spoken unless it must be. His ink freezes if left too long uncapped, and the parchment cracks slightly if turned too fast. But he works steadily. He is not young. His beard is more white than gray. A gesture, not demand. The boy holds it. Monks return to their cots. The snow falls again outside. But inside, the fires remain, and his knees ache when the air is especially sharp. But his gaze is steady. He understands the season. A monk closes the curtain, bows once, and begins to recite softly. Another prepares the burial linen. There will be no mourning, only reverence. The body will be washed with rosemary, wrapped in wool, and carried at dusk to the edge of the trees. The ground there is too hard to dig, so the monks have built a chamber of stone where the cold preserves until thaw returns. Every gesture is deliberate. Nothing is rushed. He has seen 27 winters behind these walls. He knows which ones passed with hardship and which ones broke men entirely. This one, he thinks, falls somewhere in between. The manuscript is not a gospel today, but a record of remedies. Elderberry infusions, sage compresses, pine syrup for cough. It is written not for nobles, but for anyone who might read it one day, even if that day is years from now. This too is mercy, to preserve. Warmth in this place is a practice, not a privilege, not in a home, not in a castle, but behind thick walls of stone and silence, where men in robes rise before dawn, not to command or to harvest, but to tend. Not just to books and rituals, but to the sick, the lost, the forgotten. The monastery sits on the edge of the valley, half hidden by pines and snowdrifts. Inside, a monk wraps a length of wool around the shoulders of a coughing traveler. He says nothing, only steadies the man's shaking hands and helps him sip broth from a clay cup. The liquid is thin, made from lentils and dried herbs grown behind the cloister wall. But it soothes. Her skin is pale and papery. Her eyes never leave the rafters above. But her hands twitch when the water touches her toes. When the monk dries them gently with linen, she exhales. Just once, but deeply. It is the sound of permission, as being seen. The traveler's eyes flicker closed, not from sleep, but from relief. His breath slows. The monk bows his head once and moves on to the next bed. The infirmary is a long room lit by low windows and warmed by 3 fires kept alight day and night. Further down the corridor, another monk kneels beside a basin, washing the feet of an old woman too weak to speak. This care is not glamorous. There's no triumph in it. It's only repetition, the washing of hands, the stirring of porridge. One of the scriptorium, one of the younger brother's copies, texts by the light of a small window. Abda. The abbot walks the grounds in silence, pausing often to watch the snow melt slightly on the southern eaves. He stops at the garden plot, now blanketed in frost, and presses his boot into the soil. Back inside, a bell rings. Not the great bronze one, but a small chime from the infirmary. One of the sick has passed. In the kitchen, a brother stirs a pot of nettle soup. The monastery is not free from hardship, but it answers hardship differently. At night, the brothers gather for final prayers. When the chant ends, the abbot approaches the boy and places a folded cloth in his lap. Wool, stitched by hand. But even within the order and calm of the monastery, the rhythm begins to shift. One morning, the abbot notices something missing. Not a sound, not a face, but a presence. Snow still coats the earth, but something else coats the air. A kind of pause, too perfect, too complete. Birds are absent, squirrels unseen, not even branches creak. The road, once marked with wheel ruts and boot prints, lies smooth and undisturbed. The wind does not speak here, it only listens. The boy, the silent one found beside the road, is gone. Over the past weeks, messengers failed to return. One monk, sent to deliver cordials to a distant village, was never seen again. But this new presence offers none. Takes quietly, entire families, entire streets. Some believe it comes not through the body, but through the air, through silence itself. A hush so completed consumes the soul. Another came back pale, trembling, with no words. He could only weep and point toward the hills. The brothers assumed he had seen violence. Others do. Chant returns, soft, steady. Not for show, but for remembrance. Each evening they sing not just for the sick, but to ward off the silence itself, as if sound might stitch the world back together. Perhaps in some way it does. 2. A woman arrives with her infant, walking through the snow barefoot. A man follows days later, pulling a sled made from an old door. A single candle is seen flickering in the window of the chapel. Who lit it? No one knows. But it burns through the night, his brother asleep upon it. Neither speaks of what they saw. They only bow, eat, and sleep near the fire. The monks feed them without question. You sleep in the upper room of an inn left half-swept. Blankets still on the beds, a ledger open at the desk. The name stopped 4 days ago, but he hangs it above the gate anyway, tied with wool. To remind them, he says, that someone is still here, lie beneath wool, but the chill remains, not just of the air, but of vacancy. It presses against your chest like a question. What could empty a town without sound, without chaos, without a mark? But now, they understand. He had seen nothing at all. They have no rule for this. No verse, no remedy. They speak of plague. Not the fevered kind, but something older than disease. Not of fear, not of death, but of duty. The monastery will remain open. The gates will stay unlocked. If others seek shelter, they will be taken in. But the brothers will no longer leave. For the first time in decades, the bell will not ring. The sound, they agree, might bring the wrong kind of attention. A monk named Cherdich, youngest among them, speaks of a tale from his village, of a sickness that lived in stillness, that moved when no one watched, that took those who forgot to sing. It was only a story. Until now. A wooden sign that once listed market days sways gently, its paint faded. Inside, the streets are still. No carts, no barking dogs, no smoke. Inside, a bowl of melted wax sits beside a bent candlestick. Pews remain in perfect order. The altar cloth is slightly askew, as if someone stood quickly and left mid-prayer. You notice a basket of bread beside the sacristy, each loaf untouched, rimmed with frost. It looks fresh, impossibly so. Your breath fogs before your lips. Still, no one comes. A single scarf hangs from a post, caught in frost, unmoving. Doors are closed, windows shuttered. But the silence is not the kind born of sleep. It is the silence of departure, or abandonment. His folded wool cloth remains by the fire, untouched. No door creaked in the night. No alarm was raised. Yet he has vanished, leaving only his breath and memory. The monks search the grounds, the grove, the stream beyond the wall. They find nothing, not even footprints. And it is this, more than his absence, that disturbs them most. Silence, after all, has always been familiar. But this new kind, the kind that devours without warning, feels unfamiliar and wrong. You walk through the forest path that links the monastery to the nearest market town, where monks once traded dried herbs for wax and barley. The gates of the town stand ajar. They are never ajar. You step carefully along the main thoroughfare. Baker's peel still leans beside an empty oven. The coals inside are dead and gray. In the tavern, tankards sit half-washed in basins of frozen water. A child's doll lies on the stoop of a boarded house. its cloth body dusted in snow. The only living thing you see is a chicken roosting beneath an overturned cart, eyes wide, feathers fluffed. It does not flee when you approach, it only watches. There is no sign of struggle. No blood, no broken locks, but also no people. It is as though the town inhaled, and then forgot how to exhale. From the monastery's records, it becomes clear that this is not the first such place. Illness had always made itself known. It came with coughs, with fever, with slow breath and final stillness. It gave warning. It asked permission. In the town you walk, a small chapel stands with its doors half open. At night, the snow returns. Back at the monastery, the monks convene in private. The abbot, as always, listens, and he speaks. You stay within the walls now, in the chapel. At the edge of the grounds, Brother Cheridich begins carving a small bell from wood. It will not ring. And far away, in that town now covered fully in white, the candle in the chapel window burns quietly, unseen by most, yet meaningful in its defiance. A flicker in the whiteness. A light where none should be. But beyond the monastery walls, beyond the village paths and snowed-in farms, the stillness grows larger. It reaches over forests, across frozen rivers, and into the echoing chambers of stone-lined cities, where even kings begin to feel the frost, not only in their halls, but in their power. You arrive in the capital not with a trumpet's call, but with the hush of drifting snow, from hunger, from fear. But these walls hold more than tapestries. They echo with the footsteps of fewer servants now. They bake loaves with dark grain and dried root, molded into neat shapes, and painted with egg to mimic the golden crusts of richer days. It is all performance now, a ritual of appearance, not abundance. Whole wings of the palace have been closed. Fires do not reach the outer chambers. The queen has not left her bedchamber in 5 days. One speaks of a dream he had, of fields returned to green, of children laughing. Another speaks of a silence so deep it rang in his ears. They do not laugh. Dreams have weight in seasons like this. Words even spoken in jest feel like offerings to something listening. His boots were found at the edge of the wood beside prints that stopped mid-step. A path once clear now lies unbroken. When questioned, he speaks of a valley where bells once rang each morning, now filled with snow. He saw no footprints. No fire. She speaks only to her maid, asks for a bowl of broth, then forgets she is asked. The physician burns rosemary in her chamber, more for himself than for her. The palace grows quieter. Past paintings of harvests and battles, past the high windows rimmed in frost, to the chapel where the royal relic is kept, a jeweled cross said to have traveled through 3 kingdoms and 5 famines. No one tells her to. No one notices at first. But another joins, then a stable boy, and one of the guards. Now, stone paths curl through drifts of snow, and only the sundial remains visible. He places his hand upon it. The metal is warm from sun that barely rose. He thinks of time and of silence, and of how as a leaf both can slip past a man too confident in permanence. He does not flinch. For a moment, he is not king. It's only a man in winter, remembering what warmth felt like. By nightfall, there are 12 candles burning along the eastern wall. Small, fragile flames. The bell chimes from the cathedral. Once, then stops. Whether it was accident or intent, no one knows. But it reminds them all that someone, somewhere, is still within. Their warmth means little against the cold. Their presence means more. But another, far in the east, where bells still ring. He writes, not as king, but as pilgrim. He asks only, what do you see from your tower? What grows in the silence? He seals the letter with wax and orders it carried at dawn. He kneels. But his prayer is not for victory, it is for clarity. Only statues of saints toppled and frozen, their faces worn smooth by wind. His message is written down, sealed, and handed to the royal scribe. The ink on the page freezes slightly before drying. The youngest prince, once loud and always underfoot, has not spoken since the nursemaid was taken away. She had coughed only twice, but no one questioned her removal. The roads leading to it are deserted. The river is frozen. The steward protests. If the grain is shared too early, the palace will not outlast the thaw. The chaplain suggests fasting. The physician recommends warmth, broth, prayer. All agree on one thing: they must not show weakness. If the people believe the palace has grown cold, fear will spread faster than illness. They speak of confidence, of symbols. But the king says nothing. Beneath fur-lined robes and behind gilded doors, the king sits by the fire with his council. He is not old nor weak, but his hands remain wrapped in cloth, and his breath is shorter now. They speak of grain shortages in the north, of towns gone silent in the west. One advisor reads aloud a message from a distant barony. No carts have come. No riders. The snow has swallowed the road. We are making soup from bones and bark. The once bustling bridge now hosts only silence and a trail of abandoned carts half buried in white. Within the walls, the city moves, but more slowly than before. Market stalls are shuttered, fires burn behind closed shutters. And in the shadow of the cathedral, no choirs sing. The plague, though few name it aloud, has taken voices before it takes bodies. In the royal palace, the windows are covered in thick velvet, not for privacy, but for insulation. The king listens. He says little. He rubs a gold coin between his fingers, a habit now unconscious. The metal does not warm. It is easy to imagine a crown protects its wearer from winter. In the great kitchen, the chefs prepare meals more modestly. Butter is stretched with lard. Wines are watered. Fruit is now a memory. One afternoon, a rider arrives. Alone cloaked, his horse frothing with ice, kneels before the gate guards and says, "Only the abbey is gone." That night, the king walks the gallery alone. Outside, the snow falls in sheets. Guards stand beneath porticos, breath clouding. The next day, the council meets again. The king's chancellor proposes rationing from the royal stores. That night, he writes a letter to a monastery he once visited in youth. Not the one from before, but morning brings news. The messenger assigned has vanished. The queen's cough worsens. In the courtyard, a servant girl lights a candle and places it in the snow. The king walks the garden at dusk, where once roses grew. From the tower, the city looks still, but not dead. Smoke rises here and there. A child's laugh echoes faintly. The king removes his gloves, places his bare hands on the frost-covered stone. The king stands barehanded at the edge of his frozen garden, surrounded by snow and memory, and for the first time in many weeks, the wind does not bite. It moves instead with a softer touch. Not warm, not yet, but no longer hostile. He lifts his hand from the sundial and watches the faint shimmer left behind. The delicate glisten of water where once there had only been frost. It is the smallest of things, but it is something. And elsewhere, far beyond the palace walls, air flows in, wet, raw, filled with the scent of melting snow. She turns her head toward it, closes her eyes, and exhales. She speaks only once. It smells like the river again. You can hear wind, no longer a blade, but a sigh. Even the snow has begun to sound different. Not brittle, but sodden, heavy with its own ending. The frost on windows beads into droplets. The wells, once frozen to the rim, echo again when buckets drop. The echo is not music, but it is close. Two travelers arrive with walking sticks and cloaks torn from thorns. Slowly, once at sunrise, once at dusk. Their sound is cracked at first, strained by ice, but they endure. They do not promise anything, but they do not hide. People look up from windows. Some cross themselves, some cry. One man raises his daughter onto his shoulders and points toward the sound. It means the bell tower still stands, he says. A fox walks the river's edge, nose to the ground. Life, once silent, begins to hum again. It's not with joy, not yet, but with the low, steady sound of survival turning forward. She nods, though she doesn't fully understand. Their cheeks are burned by wind, but their eyes are clear. They speak of roads slowly opening, of others traveling. A woman seen planting seeds into wet earth with bare fingers, singing softly. The monks listen, then bring bread. The prince, curled beside her, says nothing, but he too shifts closer to the window. Others notice it too. Beneath one collapsed cottage, they find a man and his dog, both curled beside a fire that never caught. Outside her window, she hears the creak of tree limbs, not from wind but from slow expansion, the kind that precedes bloom. She does not go out, but she sets a basin by the door to catch the melt. Beneath another drift, a wooden spoon, a woven doll. The names of those who did not survive are spoken again, gently by firesides, not in lament, but in remembrance. A loaf of bread left to cool on the sill draws a stray dog. The man watches it eat, does not chase it away. For weeks, he has fed his flock from dwindling stores. But now, beneath the edges of the drift, he sees green, sparse, and tentative. He kneels and presses a finger into it. The grass folds and springs back. He does not smile. He only whistles. The sheep lift their heads and follow. In the village, the snow has not melted. The widow. The letters smear, but she laughs. Her brother stomps beside her, lifting slush with his boots. Their mother calls from the door, not in warning, but with something almost like cheer. The pot on the hearth simmers louder today. The broth, perhaps tastes less of bark, stirs from her sleep and notices the air smells different. Less smoke, more earth. She steps outside and kneels by the side of her house, where the wall once shadowed a patch of herbs. Nothing grows yet, but the soil is no longer stone. She presses her palm to it, damp. Her lips part, but she says nothing. Words would only dilute the feeling, but it has shifted. It slides slowly from thatched roofs and thin curls. The footpaths, once frozen ruts, now yield slightly beneath each step. And in the deepest parts of the woods, the first trickle of water murmurs beneath sheets of ice. It is not a stream, not yet, but it moves. That is enough. Breda. Inside the monastery, a candle flickers with less struggle. Stone, still cold, but not bitter. He remembers a year, long ago, when spring came too soon and was punished by a second freeze. He remembers another when it did not come at all. No, this feels like neither. This feels cautious, like the world itself is deciding whether it is safe to return. The monks, ever observant, note that the beeswax has softened more quickly today. Bread rises slightly faster in the oven. One brother hears the clatter of a bird on the roof tiles, a blackbird, tentative, restless. Its song is clumsy, unfinished, but real. They do not mention it aloud during prayers. They simply let their chants stretch half a note longer than usual. The abbot stands by the cloister arch and watches snow drip slowly from the ivy. He places his hand on the wall. Back in the castle, the queen asks for her windows to be opened. It's just a crack. The physician hesitates but obeys. The city's streets remain quiet. But one shopkeeper has opened his shutters. Not fully, only by a hand's width. In the hills, a shepherd returns to the edge of his pasture. The silence that once cloaked the land now grows porous. You can hear water, softly. A girl in the village writes her name in mud, not snow. Yet the thaw does not come without grief. With the snow concealed, it now reveals. The monastery opens its gate for the first time in weeks. In the capital, the king orders the bells to ring again. That night, the stars appear for the first time in months. Not veiled behind gray, but sharp, silver, vivid. In Brida's home, the fire burns more easily. She sleeps with only one shawl now, and beyond her in the woods, the streams begin to run in earnest. The ice splits, cracks, then vanishes. Frogs wake. The thaw does not come all at once, does not sweep through the land like a song or a fire. Instead, it seeps, it loosens, it reveals. The snow is still present in corners and shadows, but the dominant color has changed. White is receding, brown is rising. Earth returns, sticky and wet, clings to boots and hems and shovels. They find antlers, shed in silence during the depth of winter. The village uncovers what it had buried, in haste, in fear, in the unspoken agreements of hunger. The soil is thick, heavy, but responsive. He plants onions first. It's not because they grow quickly, but because they last once grown. The abbot watches from the cloister arch, a ledger in hand. Names are added. Names are crossed out. Others are hidden. Sleep interrupted. Voices too quiet. Children who now flinch at loud sound. But no one tries to explain it all. They simply begin again, fixing what can be fixed, burning what cannot, and planting, always planting. He pauses often now while writing, not from grief, but from care. She lights a small lantern and leaves it outside at dusk, just for a few minutes, a signal perhaps. Still here, still breathing, still a habit, she does not say. But the light stays steady even in the wind. That is enough, and pots bubble with more than boiled bark. The village begins to speak again, not loudly, not freely, but with memory. They tell stories of winters past, of the one that just left, of those who vanished, of those who stayed, and of what might come next. Every name must be recorded, even if only in memory. A door to an abandoned cottage is finally unbarred. Inside, silence, a thin quilt, a broken bowl. No names spoken aloud, but everyone understands. The queen now walks the halls daily, slow and pale, but standing. The scent is enough to still conversation for a full minute. Then, softly, the youngest servant laughs, not mockery. The ink is darker now, the quill more precise. Her writing today is not about grain or illness or lists of needs. Crow caws not harshly, but with rhythm. The village carpenter sharpens his tools with a sense of purpose, not survival. The chapel bell rings again, not in mourning, but in marking the day. Sound is thinner than before. But it is sound. It is about names. The boy who brought firewood. The girl who danced in the snow. The widow who fed the birds even while hungry. What survives, she writes, is not always what we expect. Just release. The cook stirs the pot without comment, but her lips quirk slightly at the corners. Small joys, measured and sincere. The prince follows, still silent, but with a stick he uses to trace symbols in the dust. The king holds counsel less often. Instead, he walks the battlements. He watches the roads as they clear. He sends messengers not with orders, but with questions. Who remains, he writes. What do they need? One family returns to their root cellar and finds the last of their dried beans spoiled by mold. They laugh bitterly. Even now, the father says. Even now, they betray us. They find nests knocked from branches. A cracked bowl, frozen into a drift, now free. They bring these things home like treasures, not for use, but for proof that something came through, that not everything was taken. It carries a smell, pungent, sharp, almost sour, that reminds the body of rot and life in equal measure. The villagers step lightly now, but not because of ice, because of what they might find beneath their own footsteps, beneath the melting snow and the dripping roofs, beneath the softened thatch and darkening fields. Things long hidden begin to show their shape again. Not all of them are welcome, but all are real. May promise renewal, but it begins with remembering. And for those who survive the winter, that remembering is not easy. You walk through the village just as the first full mud prints begin to appear in the paths. Behind Brida's cottage, the soil has begun to yield. She kneels carefully, pulling away the straw covering she laid months ago. Beneath it, green, faint, curling, hesitant. Shoots of sage and something she cannot yet name. Her fingers tremble, not from cold, but from awe. She cups the leaves gently, alive, still here. The roots had waited even when she had nearly stopped hoping. Elsewhere, children explored the edge of the woods. But not all discoveries bring joy. At the monastery, Brother Cheridich walks the garden with a small iron spade. In the castle, life does not resume. It reshapes. In the kitchens, the cook lifts the lid of a pot to reveal not just barley, but a single bay leaf. Some scars are visible. Chimneys fallen, roofs collapsed, bones, sometimes. Lady Margaret writes once more in her ledger. She has not missed a week. And beyond her words, the signs of change multiply. Sheep gives birth. A well overflows with meltwater. Brida hangs a bundle of dried herbs above her door. In the fields, someone carves a single word into the mud with the end of a stick. Still, not a sentence, not a plea, just a truth. And at night, when the fires burn in hearths, no longer guarded with fear, and so the stories begin again. It's not grandly, not all at once, but in the slow, habitual way that life reclaims space. From the melted snow comes mud. Thinner, but taller, help with baskets. They do not complain. Their games are quieter. The roads are passable. The snow has retreated to the highest peaks. Some villages have begun their markets again. The crops are in. People speak of lambs born strong and early. A frost retreating faster than expected. He writes nothing, says little, but he orders the royal seed stores unlocked. Share quietly, he says. Make it seem as if they always had what they needed. Less pretend. Brida plants again, sage. Thyme. A little lavender. Just enough for scent. Soft, shared. Someone plays a whistle and no one minds the wrong notes. A girl dances and a stranger offers a flower. A real one, freshly picked. She ties bundles of dried bark and wild garlic to dry above her fire. Into how they measure seeds, to how they touch each other's arms before speaking. No one says we made it, but everyone knows they did. A quiet unclenching. A warmth that is not from fire, but from breath, from voices, from footsteps on softened paths. The world which had folded in on itself for so long has begun to unfold again. Not wide, not fast, but enough. Maybe kindness and silence and stubborn hope have always been enough to carry us through. Visitors come more often now. They bring eggs. She gives them soap. The rhythm is slow, but sure. More shared. She brings no guard. Only wool, needles, books, and a ledger. Birds answer it. The sky is not entirely blue. It remains streaked with cloud, heavy in places. But the light feels different now, carries warmth. It leaves color in its wake. The ice on the stream has gone, and the stream speaks again. Its language made of pebbles and current. The children gather near her as she sits on a bench, recording what was planted, what was lost, what has returned, not because they are dirty, but because she can. The water is cold, but not painful. It rushes past her palms and takes nothing from her. She asks one boy, "And what do you remember?" He shrugs. They crackle for warmth, not for survival. The stories told now are gentler. Not of what was lost, but of what was found. One man swears he saw the old fox again, limping, but alive. A child dreams of summer wheat. Another sketches the monastery bell in charcoal and gives the drawing to Brother Sherditch. It's not accurate, but it is full of care. Snow, he says, and soup. Oh, she smiles. A fine start. One girl braids a stalk of new grass into her hair, and her brother copies her without a word. Behind them, the baker's wife tests yeast for the first time in months. It rises, slowly, but it rises. From mud, the brothers walk barefoot in the garden, not as ritual, but as return. The earth is soft. The herbs push through. A single violet blooms beside the cloister wall. Brother Cherditch finds it first. He does not pluck it. He kneels, studies it, and smiles without showing his teeth. The abbot watches from the shade. "Write it down," he says. "Even one flower matters." The streets have not filled, not yet, but they stir. A merchant opens his shutters fully. A woman sells small jars of honey scraped from winter stores. The prince walks the gardens again, this time with a paper bird he folds and refolds. The queen sings. Just once, just a line. But a handmaid hears and tells another. By evening, the entire court knows. From roots, leaves, and from leaves, color. The green is not loud, not vivid, but real. It creeps along hedgerows. It edges the bases of trees. It returns not as a triumph, but as a quiet correction. It's if the land is slowly remembering what it was. The villagers plant without ceremony. They do not sing as they once did. They do not decorate their tools, but they move with purpose. The rows are straighter this year. The soil has been turned with a different kind of care, not only from hope, but from memory. They remember what it is to go without. And so each seed dropped into the earth is placed with both intention and caution. No motion is wasted, no kernel forgotten. This spring may look like others, but it carries a weight the others did not. Children at the monastery. In the royal city, the bells ring with more clarity. The king receives word from his riders. Back in the village, the fields begin to glow. Not golden yet, but greening. The fences are repaired, the windows opened. Lady Margaret rides down into the village for the first time in a season. The church bell tolls on a clear morning, and no one flinches. A woman kneels by the river bank and washes her hands. At night, fires are still lit, but no longer guarded. And when the first market day returns, there are only 6 stalls. The cheese is hard, the apples bruised, the bread uneven, but laughter rises. The winter is not forgotten, nor forgiven. It is woven now into the way people stir their pots. And you, walking the edges of the village as the sun sinks lower, feel something loosen in your chest. You pause beneath a tree, just beginning to leaf. A breeze stirs its branches. You close your eyes. You listen. Maybe we haven't changed as much as we think. Thank you for being here. Sweet dreams.